I'm Dr. Davo, and we are in a 12-series presentation on the letter of 2 Timothy, where Paul writes from Rome to Timothy in Ephesus to encourage this young minister. Here in the Thanksgiving section, it's verses 3, 4, and 5. As I read this, I want you to see, you can't see it necessarily in your English text, but there are 3 different repetitions of Paul remembering in prayer, specifically on behalf of Timothy and for Timothy. And here we have Paul saying, I thank God, whom I serve, just as my forefathers did, with the pure conscience, as I unceasingly remember you in my prayers night and day. What I want you to see about this first remembrance is Paul is emphasizing his liturgical or his priestly service. So Paul is emphasizing to Timothy that as a minister, he is praying for Timothy as a priest night and day. And night and day signals to me this idea of what the temple was about. The altar where the smoke would always rise day and night, the 2 different offerings, morning and evening, the candle stand and the smoke that would rise from the fire burning from the candles. And then in the incense altar, the priest would always maintain these more than symbols. They were actually actions of worship as God required and wanted. Paul is doing that on behalf of Timothy. Paul is not saying he doesn't sleep and he doesn't ever stop thinking about praying for Timothy. He is just invoking this idea of his role as an apostle. In verse 4, we have this second repetition, but here Paul is saying, I'm receiving something from you, Timothy. In the first century, a family relationship or a friendship relationship, there would be a return that was received. It was about reciprocity. But Paul is wanting Timothy to know that he's receiving joy from Timothy. It actually reads literally, I yearn to see you, remembering your tears, in order that, the purpose clause, that I might be full of joy. Paul wants Timothy to know that their relationship brings him great joy. We don't exactly know what these tears were for. Maybe it was the last time they saw each other and Timothy cried, or it might have been a difficult time and a time of hurt for Timothy in terms of his ministry, and he'd been hurt or wounded. We're not exactly sure what the tears are for, but we have this intimate expression that just seeing Timothy would bring great joy in their relationship. In verse 5, we have the third remembrance or prayer in this Thanksgiving section. I've been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am confident or persuaded that now lives in you. This faith is dwelling in them. It's the word for dwelling or living. In a sense, we get the idea that Jesus Christ lives in his mother, and Jesus Christ lives in his grandmother, and so lives in Timothy. In Galatians, we read Paul says, I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Paul is supporting Timothy through spiritual lineage, from his mother's side, and then, of course, from Paul's spiritual mentoring. So what can we take away from this Thanksgiving section? It's important for all of us to see that God wants us to be encouraged, that the role that we have is priestly as the people of God and those who are proclaiming the gospel. But while we're doing this, God has people on our behalf that are praying for us and want to see us strengthened. We're doing this for others, just as Paul does it for Timothy, and God is doing this through others on our behalf, just as Timothy is receiving from Paul. And finally, have confidence. Be confident. Receive the confidence that no matter what's going on right now, Christ lives in you. He's called you to a particular task, and the Lord has confidence in you that you can carry it out.